Hi everybody, welcome to another makeover. And today I'm going to make two pieces of furniture out of one. I picked up a Danish teak wall unit and this is the bottom part of it. It's in pretty good shape except for the top. And this is the second part of the wall unit and I wanted to make like a display cabinet out of it. The top part was in a worse shape than the bottom part, but still it was fixable. So my idea was to separate the pieces because I've been selling those large credenzas and they're actually the people there who lives in the small apartment but they still want to have nice thick piece of furniture. And that's great that the piece was in really good shape because those smaller pieces they don't sell for high dollars, and the only way I can make my profit here is not to spend too much time working with these pieces. One cool thing about those pieces, the shelvings you can see inside, they put in a kind of weird way. I guess this was for the vinyl record, but they are on the metal guides inside and that gives me a possibility to rearrange them different way. First, I wanted to take the doors out because it would be more convenient to work with them. I worked with similar credenza before and there was a spot in the middle where I could pull the doors out, but not in this one. I tried everything, didn't work. So I left the doors in and I started cleaning the piece with TSP degreaser. And after cleaning, it turned out that as I had thought, I only needed to refinish the top. Couldn't say the same thing about the top part. After cleaning, the scratches that were still there, miracle didn't happen, so I had to refinish the top and the sides. I tried to scrape the old finish, but it seemed like the only finish they used was the hard wax oil, so it will be easy to sand. I started with 120 grit sandpaper instead of 180 because there were some scratches and I wanted to get rid of them while sanding. I sanded the top of the bottom part, I'm gonna call it credenza, and then I sanded the top and the sides of the top part, and let's call it a bookshelf. For the deep scratches, I used my iron to try to steep them out. I usually spray some water to the areas with the scratches, and then I put a piece of cloth on the top and apply a hot iron. And if it's not enough, I just spray over the cloth and I apply my iron again. I was able to erase the wood fiber on this big dents on the top of credenza, but those big scratches on the bookshelf, they needed way more attention. I spent about 15 minutes doing the same thing all over again. Spraying water, ironing, spraying water, ironing. But it was worth it because I was able to get rid of most of the scratches except for that big one, but I made it almost invisible. I sanded everything with 180 grit and finished with 220. And on the edges, I kind of sand it with veneer. It's not that bad on the credenza, but on the bookshelf, it's way worse. You'll see it in a bit, but right now I'm trying to camouflage this spot. And on the credenza, I decided to do it before I apply any top coat. I used furniture repair kit. I ordered it from Amazon, and I'm not going to recommend this one to you because I'm not really happy with that. It's not bad, but it's not great because sometimes it all depends which color of wood filler you use. It dries as a glossy finish and I don't like it because it's really hard to hide it. Here I'm using the color cherry and it's not bad, but as soon as I add teak or dark walnut, it's gonna be glossy. I wanted to put my credenza on the legs, so here we go, I'm building my custom legs. I had a scrap piece of elm in my stash, but it wasn't thick enough, so I cut it in half and then I glued those parts together. I used the carpenter wood glue, I applied decent amount, and then I clamped the wood and I let it dry over the night. And here are the legs for my bookshelf. I bought this table at the garage sale and I only bought it for the legs because it was $5 and you can't find those legs for $5. And trust me, I tried to take those cups off, but I think they were glued to the legs because I just couldn't. So I sanded the legs with the cups on because I was going to repaint them anyways. Next morning, my piece of wood was completely dry and ready for a table saw. First, I straightened the edges and then I cut this piece in 3 parts. So I was able to get not 4 but 6 legs out of it. Of course, I didn't need 6 legs, but in case I screw up, it's nice to have the spare ones. I also had a scrap piece of wood which was a part of old bed frame and I used it for the base. I wanted to have an angled legs, so first I cut the edges of my future base at a 12-degree angle. And then I cut the bottom and the top part of my future legs at the same 12-degree angle. Because it was salvaged wood, it was a part of old bed frame. There were some holes here and there in the board. To patch those holes, I mixed some epoxy glue with the sawdust. For now, it's the best wood filler for me. And there was a tiny gaps in between boards I glued together for the legs. It wasn't a big deal, they were not even visible, but just in case, I applied the epoxy to those gaps as well. Once the epoxy hardened, I sanded the baseboard and the legs. As usual, I started with 120 and finished with 220 grit sandpaper. To stain the base and the legs, I used my favorite water-based stain in the color Amaretto. So far, this stain worked perfect on any type of wood and it gives this orangish teak look. To get that greenish undertone teak has, I applied very thin stain in the color Golden Oak. I applied it over my water-based stain once it's dried. And the legs for the bookshelf I stained the same way. First water-based Amaretto, then very thin oil-based Golden Oak. Here's the metal glides I was talking about. I wanted to change the way the shelves were inside the credenza. For that, I needed to drill a couple of new holes. I measured where my holes were supposed to be. I drilled those holes and then I reattached the metal glides. I had some Danish oil on hand and I decided to apply it to the rest of the credenza just to refresh the old finish. I left the oil penetrating and meanwhile I attached the legs to the baseboards. I pre-drilled the holes in the base and then I attached it to the piece. As you can see, I didn't build the whole base with like 4 sides. I only built 2 sides because I just didn't feel like I needed it. And by the way, off camera, I wiped off an excess of Danish oil. At first, I wasn't planning on staining the back base because, you know, nobody's gonna see it, but then I changed my mind and I stained it off camera. I promise I did that. And the funny thing is that the hardest part of this refinishing was to get rid of those wool pads. Oh my gosh, that glue is so good. They get stuck like forever. As a top coat for the credenza, I decided to use Rubio Monocoat. I mixed it in 3:1 ratio, 3 parts of the oil and 1 part of the activator. And then I applied it using an old credit card. You can also apply it using a white or gray non-abrasive pad, but for me, I find this method is way easier. But I usually use a gray pad to spread the oil evenly after I apply it with the card. For the bookshelf, I decided to use wipe-on poly because there was a repair to do and it was pretty large area and I didn't want to screw it up. So I applied the first coat and I let it dry. Once the first coat of poly dried, I started fixing my burns through the veneer problem. First, I mixed the base color, it's the lightest color. I let it dry and then I used the wood markers I bought from Home Depot to add some shades and those darker lines. And of course, the spot with my repairs was a bit glossy because of different wood fillers. So I decided to use 320 grit sandpaper because I was going to use it anyways to smooth the surface before applying the second coat of my poly. And I sanded that spot a little bit to get rid of that gloss. And then I applied the second coat of wipe-on poly. I ended up applying 4 coats of poly, waiting about 3 hours between coats. Before attaching the legs to the bookcase, I covered them in the newspaper and I sprayed the cups with brass lacquer. The bottom part of the bookshelf looks so dry, so I decided to apply some Danish on it. I'll be honest with you, I don't do it all the time, but this time I just felt like I had to. Once the cups dry, I measured where I wanted the legs to be. I pre-drilled the holes and then I attached the mounting plates I ordered from Amazon. The last thing, I screwed the legs in there and we are done here. And because there is not much of a difference between before and after, let's just skip the before and go straight to the after. So here's the credenza and it sold so fast that I didn't even have time to make videos. I only got photos of it. I love how that base turned out, I love the whole look of it, and my repairs, they're almost unnoticeable. Only I know where they are. Here's how I rearranged the shelves, and I think it's much better this way. And here's the upgraded bookshelf. And no, I don't have marble walls and floors. This is an AI helped me to stage that piece. So here's the beautiful top with no scratches, and here's the side with my big repair. What do you think about both pieces? As usual, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and see you next video.